Hello, good evening, everybody. It's Krish here from Command and Camera Centre with yet another live seminar session for you guys. I hope you're all safe and well. Apologies, I've had to switch to a bit of a rudimental webcam spot here today instead of my usual camera due to technical difficulties, last-minute technical difficulties. They always seem to happen. But hey, there we go. The show must go on. So today, as you hopefully already know, we've got the absolutely fantastic wildlife guru, as it were, Danny Green, joining us. It's always a pleasure to have Danny. We've worked with him in the past, and we keep on calling him back because he's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure after this presentation, you will all agree, hopefully. So without further ado, let's get Danny in and let's say hi. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to add you to the stream. Danny, good evening. Hello, mate. Are you all right?
Hi, Chris. How are you, mate?
I'm not too bad at all. Thank you, my friend. Not too bad at all. How's things, mate? How's life?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I've just getting ready for coming out of lockdown, I suppose, like everybody. We kind of see maybe light at the end of the tunnel now, but
fingers crossed. That's it.
I've been quite busy though. I've been doing some photography in the garden and doing bits and bobs. So yeah, I've been keeping my hand in, you know. So
that's the way. Absolutely, mate. That is the way. I like it. I like it, Pod. So, Danny, let's jump straight into my interrogation, as it were, mate. Okay. So, tell us a little bit for the guys that don't know Danny Green Photography and you know you sort of your wildlife ventures. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got into photography.
So I started photography well as soon as I left school, really, Chris, which was 1988. I was always interested in wildlife. I've always been interested ever since I can remember, really. You know, just going fishing like we did as kids, and we had to make our own kind of occupy our own time, didn't we, really, in them days, and no TV or Netflix and things like that. So I was just always interested in wildlife, and I think really for me, just kind of stumbled across photography, really, and I just took it from there. So I've been doing it, you know, about over nearly 32 years now, which is a long time. So
nice.
Yeah, I just used to work locally. I used to, you know, photograph around where I live, which is in Leicestershire, and I started to get travel a little bit in about 15 years ago, and I've obviously been extremely lucky and gone to some fantastic places now. But I've never lost that love for the local wildlife, though. I've always kind of, in between trips that I've done, I've always kind of dabbled and moved back into a long-term project to photograph something, you know, in around my home. Really, I'm a great believer in that sort of photography.
Amazing stuff, mate. Amazing stuff. Well, that's yeah. With every time we have an ambassador on or a pro, I can't wait to get to the images. It's absolutely fantastic, and you've got a lovely selection for us. But Danny, is wildlife something that you've always done, or have you dabbled in all different types of photography in the early days? Or
yeah, in the early days, like I say, I've been a full-time pro now since 2000, and in them early days, I used to do a bit of wedding photography, and like I say, that's one kind of photography I don't miss. I kind of admire. You go to a wedding now, and you can see how stressed the photographer is, and it's such a stressful time. And so I don't miss that at all. I mean, it was kind of, for me, it was just to stop that, really, Chris, as I was trying to build up my name and reputation, and you know, it paid the bills in them early days. But
certainly, yeah, absolutely. And go on, sorry.
I'm probably a very frustrated landscape photographer. That's what I would say. Actually, some of my favourite photographers are landscape guys, and I just can't do it. I just find it impossible to do. And I see a beautiful spot in front of me, but I can't make it look like a good picture. So
no, right. Oh, that's mad, man. That's mad. And so moving on a little bit from that, is Canon a brand that that you've always shot with and stuck with, or did you start somewhere else and navigate over to, or?
No, the first camera I bought was it was called an EOS 600 RT. I don't know if you ever come across one of them. It was obviously a film camera, and then I kind of moved up through different Canon cameras all the way along. So I've only ever shot on Canon gear, and of course, you know, you kind of accumulate lenses over the years, don't you? And that's probably your single biggest investment in lenses, especially some of the big glass that I use today. So
I was going to say, yeah, you're not messing about when it comes to some of those longer lenses, isn't it? In terms of their price point, and
well, they're kind of the price of a small car, aren't they? So you know,
deposit on a house, some of them, aren't they? So it's a bit mad. But when did when did the Canon connection sort of come in? You know, did they approach you and say, Danny Green, we're looking at you, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it kind of did really. I was. It's probably about 15 years ago that I started doing work with Canon. I think it was actually, Krish, I always felt I was kind of lucky in photography, and I always think you know, sometimes it's kind of being the right place, right time. And I was actually a really hungry photographer doing some you know, kind of working really hard to get my portfolio up, and it was just as the transition between film and into digital. And I think at that time, you know, a lot of, like I say, obviously camera manufacturers, they were really wanting to push this new medium. Yes. And it was really, for me, it was kind of right place, right time, really. And obviously, you know, it was, you know, great association that I've had with Canon over the years. So.
Definitely. When I speak to all ambassadors, it's got to be a really sort of humbling feeling to have a brand of that magnitude sort of approach you and sort of say, you know, we like your stuff, and you know, go out and here's a project for us. Like, you know, was that daunting in the beginning, or you didn't kind of think about it?
Yeah, really daunting, because you kind of, I suppose. I always say with any photographer, you're never really happy with your own work, and that's what you kind of strive yourself on to, always the next and the great, you know, the best thing, and you kind of always have them doubts that you think, well, you know, why, you know, I was at the time I was just photographing things like water voles and badgers, and I was thinking, how can that kind of compete with polar bears and you know, lions from Africa, and you know, some of the ambassadors they had at the time were like Jonathan Scott, who was you know, working in Africa and producing all this fantastic work, and a couple of guys from America that were National Geographic photographers. And so for me, it was like I felt I was nowhere near in that league, you know. But I think that's probably the appeal that maybe got me into kind of into Canon in the first place, because of that work I was doing on your doorstep, and you know, in your backyard, really. And I suppose most photographers, that is really our kind of goal. You know, we don't have an open checkbook to travel all around the world on these wonderful safaris. So
absolutely, yeah, I got you, mate. I got you. But at the same time, we all got to start somewhere, isn't it? You know, that's the benchmark. That's the one that gets you noticed, and then the bigger projects kind of come later on, don't they? That's the thing with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I totally get it. It's always interesting to hear that story. You know, how did you get from there to where you are now? You know, I love hearing. I never get tired of hearing that story from any individual. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Very motivational in that respect. You know.
Yeah, I think so. I think the other bit of luck that I got as well, I was actually, I mean, obviously most people have heard of wildlife photography here, and I was quite successful in that for a number of years. I won a few categories, and I was, you know, I was getting kind of work highly commended in it, and it was like a continuous. It seemed to be every year, you know, and it was, again, it was all subjects that. that we see in the UK, that we kind of just have like like pictures of water voles and barn owls and things like that. It was just great to be able to actually have them, and they were kind of sitting at the head table with all this iconic wildlife that you get around the world, really. So
excellent. Oh, it's brilliant, mate. That's absolutely awesome, and you got some fantastic images to show us as well. I'm a bit gutted that we had to only pick 6, mate, to be honest. In the end, it's always, you kind of, it sort of puts you on the spot, but you picked some absolute stunners. So we'll get to those in just a second. But so just to kind of really hone in on your kit bag. On the average trip that you do now, what sort of kit can we expect to find in your bag? And have you made the leap to mirrorless yet, or are you still an SLR man?
I'm still an SLR man. I'm really toyed, really, Chris, at the moment, because I've been playing with the R5, and I've got to say, it's when I first used it, it felt like a new something completely different, and I was like, what is this thing, But the more I've used it, the more I've kind of thought, yeah, this is kind of this technology, what they're kind of produced in this kind of little camera is just amazing. And I was toying with the idea of maybe going for a 1D Mark III, just upgrading my camera, or switching completely to the mirrorless. So I'm sure you must you must have so many people asking this
every day, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm toyed really at the moment.
Sure, absolutely. I get you, but I suppose, I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, I wouldn't expect to see you out and about with maybe something like an R. Certainly not in the conditions that you're traveling around in. But do you think that in terms of the overall ergonomic build quality of the R5 or the R6, do you think that that's something that will stand up somewhere down the line in the type of the line of work that you're in?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's one of the dilemmas. I mean, it's kind of like it's that weight issue that when you're carrying a 1DX2, which is what I use with a 500 mil weight, it's a huge weight issue. And going up into the hills looking for ptarmigan or mountain air, you have to walk 10 miles a day carrying this gear, and it would be a lot easier with a smaller camera. But my only concern, really, if I've got one, is how would they cope in these extreme weather conditions that I work in? And and I suppose kind of you're never going to know until you actually try and
get up there.
I'm actually coming to the conclusion I'm actually going to probably shoot on both systems for a bit, mate.
Sure. Yeah. Easiest way. That's the thing, isn't it? Easiest way to tell if it's going to work for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and then that's when you're in that situation where you probably be forced to make one decision after another before you go on a trip or anything like that. But at least you've got that that kind of thing in your locker, really. So
absolutely. Oh, brilliant stuff, mate. Brilliant stuff. I like it, mate. Right then, shall we get into looking and talking about some images then, dude?
Yeah, you can do, mate. Yeah.
Let's jump into it, buddy. Let's jump into it. Actually, just before we do, should we have a couple of the questions out of the chat, mate, before they kind of disappear into the reel? Here we go, mate. So let me break one up here. So there we go. So first question coming in is, right, so I'm trying to get a pic of a squirrel. Have you got any tips?
So I should imagine this is a grey squirrel in the garden, and I've actually, like I said, been just photographing grey squirrels. They've been coming regular to the feeding station I set up, and I actually think when you look at a squirrel, they really got great faces, so maybe go really tight and do some kind of abstract portraits with them, So she could just simply, you could probably get the squirrel really, really close and try and do that, really tight portraits with them. I think they lend themselves well with that. The other thing I would do is just stick at it, keep at it, because what you'll find over time is you'll take some pictures. It's great. She's got red squirrels.
Red squirrel. Jacinta just came back with.
That's even better when you've got that. But just keep sticking at it and just get them coming to a bit of food. Put out some peanuts or sunflower hearts, hazelnuts they really like as well, and just keep feeding them every day, and they'll come on a regular basis. And then maybe over time you could then maybe try and capture images of them jumping, maybe from one perch to a feeding table or something. Just try and work out them different setups. And for me, it's a great subject to really get your teeth into. And she doesn't say if it's in a garden or not, but if she's got a red squirrel coming to a garden, she's really, really lucky. So
absolutely. Yeah, she just mentioned about they're so skittish, as it were.
If they are skittish, then Jacinta, why don't you maybe look at trying to buy a little canvas hide? Because then what you can do is you can put the food out in a regular spot, and then you kind of just sit in the hide, and what will happen? The squirrels won't even know you're there. So that'll just kind of keep them nice and relaxed, and then eventually you'll be able to photograph them at will, really. So.
Absolutely. There we go. Jacinta, I hope that's gone some way to answering your question. Do keep your questions coming, guys, and we will get around to them. There's a couple more, but we're gonna jump into viewing some images now as well. So me and Danny will remain on screen. As I said, me and Danny had a little chat just before we went live. So I'm going to be doing the slideshow, and Danny's going to prompt me when to move on to the next frame. Here we go. Look at that. There we go. And we're in. Right. Okie dokie. So hopefully all of you guys can see that. I'm just checking the other live feed. All looks good. Right then, dude. Let's get into the nitty gritty. To talk us through this one, buddy.
Well, when we were talking about images, and I just thought, it would be great to kind of just have some pick 6 images that I've worked on in the UK over the last few years. I really wanted to pick this one because it was, at the time, it was probably one of my most successful images that I'd taken. I actually took it about 17 years ago, believe it or not, Krish. So
right.
And it was one of the first digital images I took as well. So I'd gone from this transition of using film into digital, and it was, for me, it was so exciting because it allowed you to be able to capture like action pictures where it was so difficult on the old slide films. The cameras were, you were restricted to using 100 ISO really on a slide film, and then a digital camera come out, and you could shoot relatively quite high ISOs in them days, maybe going up to 800 ISO, and it just allowed me to be able to capture images like this, and I thought that would be a great way of kind of. It's fantastic how that change came about in that between the film and the digital age. This was a personal favourite of mine as well, because it's actually really on the outskirts of Loughborough, the town where I live.
Right.
It was just there was 2 barn owls hunting over this rough grassland, and I put a hide up there, and I just watched them every day. And it was, in a way, it was kind of like learning that fieldcraft skill. So I knew what time the owls would come out, and I knew where the best position for the hide would be. And then it was just a case of sitting in there and waiting for the owls to turn up. 9 times out of 10, they never did. They'd fly off course, or the light was bad and you couldn't get the pictures. But eventually, it's in a way, it's kind of working on that long-term image with just one image in mind. Yeah, a long-term project, but with one image in mind, which is with this bar now. I really wanted to get this backlighting against dark background, really show out the beauty of the feathers. And, you know, it's just, so for me, it was kind of, it was an epiphany moment, if you know, it was like, yeah, this is the new technology, and I'm going to embrace it. Really, so.
And you're going to go for it. Yeah, I like it, mate. It's a cracking shot. Really, really good. Really good one to get kick started. But I'm sure the guys, I can see some questions in there now, so I'm gonna, just going to sort of get a couple of those in. But in terms of your settings, mate, for this, you know, I should have asked you for the exit details, but do you know roughly, you know, what you were, you know, what focal length you were shooting at, and you know what your ISO was and things on this particular shot?
So this was it would have been a 500mm lens. Sure. That's the lens that I've had for the last 20 years, really, and it was I would have at the time it was taken on I don't know if you remember it, but it was a 1D Mark II, which was I think one of Canon's flagship digital cameras at the time. It was only 8 million pixels compared to like what you get nowadays is not a lot, but the frame rate was phenomenal, and the autofocus was well, that's probably right the benchmark of every camera since then. Does it compare to the 1D Mark II? And the only downside with it is you couldn't shoot the ISOs that you do today. So nowadays you can go up to 6,000, 10,000 ISO and get very little noise. And whereas in them days, you know, anything above 800 ISO, it was just too noisy and you lost a lot of detail. So I would have took this shot around about 800 ISO, really, Chris. Wide open on the lens. So f4, I would have like kind of real shallow depth of field, because what I wanted to do was blur that dark background and that golden grass going through the scene. So and really just allowing me to get as maximum speed I can. So and you know, and hopefully just you know, kind of arrest the movement of the bird. The only other thing that I really did in this picture was I probably underexposed the image around about a stop and a third or stop and 2/3, just to darken the background, and then it just highlights the owl from that dark background, really. So
I got you. Oh, brilliant, mate! Absolutely brilliant, lovely.
Remembering that technical detail ever.
That's it.
Took nearly 20 years ago.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. Hey, good work on remembering, Paul. Good work on remembering. But it's one of those standout shots, isn't it? You know, I'm sure. Have you ever entered this into any of the competitions and things that you've been a part of, or?
Yeah, this was kind of like one of the first shots that I actually got into the final stages of major competitions, and so it was for me. It was a great feeling that you were kind of. You know, taking this, but it was just the commercial success I had with it at the time, Krish, because I was trying to make it as a pro, and I sold it to the RSPB. It went on to like a Christmas card set, and I had front cover magazines of it, double page spreads, and you know, it just seemed to be at the time one of my biggest sellers, because barn shots at that time were actually quite rare in flight, especially creative like this, really. So, but it also, what it allowed me to do was think, actually, this is the style I like. This is the style that I want to try and shoot in. And it kind of rewards you. You think, yeah, you're on the right track here. There's something that you know, there's mileage in it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Well, guys, I can see there's a few more questions cropping up and stuff, but we'll move through a few more of the images now, and I think we'll take questions. We'll do a little bit of a Q&A then after we've had a look at some more images. Is that all right with you, Danny? Is that okay, mate?
Yeah.
Brilliant. But guys, keep your questions coming, and keep that watch retention. Right. So you ready for the next slide, dude?
I am, mate. Yeah.
Lovely job. So there we are. I fell in love with this shot when you sent this over, buddy, for me to put into this slideshow. Absolutely fantastic. But talk us through this, mate.
So this is a little bit later than the barn owl shot. I think I took this around about 2009, Krish, and
Sure.
it was kind of one of my first commissions, if you like, and I'd been commissioned by the RSPB to kind of capture some like large flocks of birds. It was it was going for the magazine feature that they produce, and I spent about 4 months of the winter traveling to like various places looking for huge starling murmurations. So I went down to Wales, the pier at Aberystwyth. I went down there. That was pretty good. And I also went down into Somerset Levels. There was a huge murmuration there. But the one I really settled on was the one at Gretna Green, which is in the border of Scotland. And this murmuration, this huge flock was, I reckon, about 1.5 million birds. It was just an unbelievable spectacle, and so I kind of started putting all my time into that. And this was an amazing evening because the birds just didn't seem to want to go to roost. They were just swirling around, dancing above the trees, producing these wonderful shapes and patterns. And basically what was happening, there was a peregrine that was trying to hunt them, and it kind of sent these ripples of panic through the entire flock. And for me, it was just one of the great spectacles that you could probably see in the planet, not let alone just in this country, but this is up there with anything that you're likely to see throughout the world, really.
Absolutely. Good. Yeah.
I remember I got, this was my biggest success ever, really, as a photographer, because I won the black and white category of the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. And it was, I came very, very close to winning the overall competition. I think I came second that year, and this was in 2010.
Wow.
And so, and it was a nice, to have a British wildlife subject in this international competition, running stages, and it was just quite a nice feeling that I was potentially going to win it with a starling murmuration picture.
With this, yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely fantastic. When I first saw it, it reminded me very much of a sort of a charcoal drawing. It's got that beautiful texture in the sky there, and then just the most wonderful sharp foreground there. In terms of your settings for a shot like this, because obviously this is a very different picture in comparison to the sort of the single subject shots that you take. Is this a slightly longer exposure? Was there a tripod involved in this, or?
Yeah, there was a tripod, and I used a slight shorter lens as well, Chris, for this one. This was taken on a 70 to 200 mm lens. Just kind of locked it on a tripod, and really what I did, I just focused on the trees. And then because it was actually really low light as well, the starlings don't really come back into their roosting site until it's getting more or less dusk. And so this was really dark at this time. And again, it was quite a high ISO, but I deliberately chose a very slow shutter speed. I was doing about, I think it was about 6 for a second. Shutter speed, and that just allowed me enough speed really to kind of get some of the birds that you could see that they were actually starlings. So anything lower than that, Krish, and it was it was just like too out of focus. So
it starts to get a bit washy then, doesn't it? Yeah. I got you.
That's why I turned it black and white as well, because when I took this picture, it was actually quite a blue cast scene on it, and the color version doesn't look anything like the black and white. But I was shooting with black and white in mind, really.
Yes, Oh, fair. Yeah. So that was it. So the way that this has come out now, you've obviously you've preconceived that. This is what I'm aiming for, and brilliant, mate. Yeah, absolutely fantastic capture.
I mean,
Brilliant
Chris, that
capture.
was the beauty about digital is when I was like using film in them days, you had like, you had one roll of film in there. It was 100 ASA. You
That's
had
it.
no freedom or no movement. You had to wait until you used that film,
Yeah.
or change it halfway through, which then lost. Was costing you money every time you did it.
Yeah.
Just
And
being able,
valuable seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
just being able to change ISO from one shot to the next, shutter speed, being creative. That was the beauty of digital. It actually allowed you to get pictures like this, which, if I'm really, really honest with you, 5 years before, I think would have been impossible on a
Right.
on
Yeah.
a
Sure.
on a film,
Uh-huh.
because you just wouldn't have been able to get that that shutter speed, even just to get a sixth of a second.
Right.
I
Yeah.
was up in the ISO, so.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. There's a question in here, dude, which I think is super relevant. So this was in slightly lower light situations. This question coming in from Rick here now. So, Danny, what's your favourite time to shoot wildlife? Mornings or evenings?
I would say evenings, Rick, because what you get is in the mornings, the sun kind of comes up pretty quick, and you kind of lose that nice supple light, quite quickly. Whereas in the evenings, after late afternoons, evenings, it just gets better and better, doesn't it, as it goes along? And you probably still have the same amount of time as the light, but it just gets softer as the sun goes down. And I really like evening times, really. And you kind of it's the time. I always think that the wildlife is just starting to wake up. If you got daytime birds, they're coming back to their roost sites, or nighttime animals are starting to come out of their dens and start getting ready for activities like deer or badgers. And so, yeah, I think evenings time's my favourite time.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, man, it works. And now, like I say, those opposite sunrise, sunsets, 6400 ISO plus is not, it's not really an issue anymore. It's just gotten better and better and better, hasn't it? So,
Yeah,
the equipment now has caught up with, especially sort of wildlife photographers' kind of habits, really, isn't it? Makes
yeah.
everything a little bit more dynamic to go out and take those shots. And I'm gonna pop another question up here, dude. Okay, so do you ever? I think this is very relevant in this day and age, with video being probably the most consumed thing on things like social media and things. Have you ever considered filming?
Yeah, I've done. I've dabbled with it, Chris, but I've got to be honest with you. I'm still a still photographer, and that's probably one aspect of the new technology. I've got like a 1DX Mark II, and the capability of the video on that camera is just phenomenal. I
It's
mean,
mad, isn't it?
it's 4K, and the quality is as good as you see on the TV, isn't it?
Oh, without
Really.
doubt,
Uh,
absolutely,
and when you
absolutely.
think most of the wildlife programs that we see on the TV now
Mhm.
are kind of shot in the same format in this 4K, and it's just phenomenal, isn't it? Really, and
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
the R5 does that shoot in eight? Is it 8K?
It does, yes, yeah, 8K 30 raw
Yeah,
internally, which is absolutely mad, isn't it? Because
yeah,
you could buy a much more expensive cinema rig that doesn't give you that
yeah,
type of capability, So yeah, no, that absolutely, the innovation is exceptional.
yeah.
Although unfortunately the execution has come into question,
Uh, I actually
but
think to be honest with you, Chris, I don't know if you. I'm not sure if you do it, but it's such a different ball game shooting video to stills, isn't it? Really?
massively so,
Yeah.
massively so, absolutely, absolutely. But there we go. There's Rick just coming back to us. Thank you for that, Danny. Much appreciated. Shall we move on to the next frame, dude?
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely. There we go. And we do have a puffin related question as well. But Danny, talk us through this particular shot, please, mate.
So again, this is kind of early days of into digital as well, Chris. It kind of it wasn't just the digital; it was also the lenses that you know. I'm going to give a plug to Canon. You know, it's Canon's sponsored the evening, and one of their best lenses they ever made. And I actually think it's really, really. I don't think they'll ever make a better lens than this. And it was the 300 2.8.
Sure.
I don't know if you ever played around with that lens, Krish, but it's just a phenomenal lens for action. Exceptionally sharp, and the autofocus was just amazing. And again, this was probably, you know, in a way, you know, you didn't see many shots of puffins in flight up until you started to see it. This combination of the 1DX2 and the 300 2.8, and of course, then you started seeing, you know, the ball started to raise, and that's when I actually thought it was a lot of photographers saying it was it's easy being a wildlife photographer now because you got this equipment, but I actually thought the opposite, and I thought no, it's going to make it harder because the ball will be constantly raising all the time, because you know, as technology improves, you're going to have to come up with newer, better images all the time, and so well, that pressure will always be there as a photographer. And
sure.
You know, I on it. That's what I do. You know, that's my
it's your bread and butter, isn't it? Yeah,
bread and butter. So
absolutely.
I thought I'd put this shot in really, Chris, as well, because what it allowed me to do with this shot was it actually took my photography onto that next level, and I started to submit some images to National Geographic, and this was back in 2006.
Right.
And I had an idea of doing a feature on puffins, on the Atlantic puffin for them, and I got quite a positive response from them, and I think it was this shot that kind of brought their attention to my portfolio, and just thought, you know, I put it number one. You know, I numbered them 1 to 50, and this was the first one. And I think once they saw that, and it, you know, and then they came back and said, yeah, we really like this. Where can you go from here? And and that following summer, I spent just 4 months traveling around the UK, every day, every waking hour, just photographing puffins. And I think I got that first year of doing puffins, I took over 250,000 images.
Wow! Right.
Traveling all these, and I sent them off in the autumn to the editor. Her name was Kathy Moran at National Geographic, and I got an email back from her saying, yeah, this is a nice start, Danny. Where do you think you can take it from here? And at that point, I thought, I just spent all summer doing puffins. And, you know, 250,000 images of them.
Yeah.
How can I take, you know, what, you know?
Where's the next level, isn't it? Good Lord, I bet. That's it. Yeah, you felt the weight of that. Absolutely. But Danny, I'm going to bring up a question here, dude. Okay, and this will sort of tie in quite nicely, I think, with the XF details for this. So have you got a favorite setting when shooting something like puffins? But just before you answer that, mate, can I ask what location this was in the UK, please?
Well, this was in your neck of the woods, mate. This was taken at Skomer. So
Skomer Island. There we go, guys. Right on the doorstep.
I don't know if you've been there, but it's one of the jewels in the Welsh Crown, I think. Just an absolutely fantastic place. And you know, I was obviously very lucky. I got to stop on the island for long periods of time, whereas most people it's just a day trip. But you can actually stop on the island now, I believe. I think you can actually stop on for a couple of nights, which is, you know, I'd put it highly recommend it for anybody who even just remotely interested in seabirds. Just a great experience. But
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
mean, favourite settings. It's I mean, whenever you're photographing birds in flight, whatever you do, don't try and mess about with depth of field.
No.
You know, stopping your depth of field down. Always shoot wide open. So whatever lens you've got, if it's a 5.6 or an f4, just keep it on that wide open because you'll need it to get the speed to arrest the movement of the bird. But one of the biggest tips I can give for photographing tough puffins is that a puffin will fly around and it'll do a loop. And I call it a figure of 8 loop. And what it does is it never lands straight away, Krish. It'll always do this loop 3 or 4 times just to check, see if there's any danger, any gulls in the vicinity or any other predator that might nick its fish, or you know. So they kind of do this figure 8 out of sea, and the trick is to try and follow it, keep your eye on that bird, and then you pick it up at a distance as it's flying towards you, and then it allows your camera to lock onto it as it's coming in. Sometimes it's actually impossible to photograph a puffin in flight when you're just trying to point straight at one when it's landing. By that point, when you've seen it land, coming into land, it's too late. You've missed it. So
sure. Yeah. So it's absolutely. And was this obviously before you approached this type of shot? Was this a habit that you were aware of? Is that something that you'd researched beforehand, or did you kind of just get there, observe, and then start shooting?
Yeah, I think spending 4 months with puffins, mate. I was kind of. I was talking to him in the end, you know. That's
it. That's it.
I spent 5 weeks on an island up in Scotland, and it was only me there with about 45,000 pairs of puffins, and it was you feel like, you know, like Tom Hanks out of Castaway.
Yes.
I had a little pet puffin I rescued. It was a young one. I actually called him Wilson, you know. So.
There we go. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That's wild, man.
It's actually just watching a subject and learning, you know, the best approach, really. So
now, do you do that with any subject matter? So let's just put everything you've ever shot. Obviously you've got you've got polar bears and things like that in your repertoire. Is that something that, you know, before you part part ways on a trip somewhere, you really do your homework on, you know, behavioral habits, what's safe to do, what's not safe to do, and when you get there, do you kind of your observation, is that with camera in hand, or do you sometimes just sit and watch?
A little bit of both, really, Chris. I mean, I think sometimes when you go to, say, like a location to photograph polar bears, you really, you know, you kind of, your opportunities are low, really, because you know, it's it might take you 2 or 3 days to find a bear, and then when you do find one, it's kind of you know, you've got to work quick, you've got to work fast, but I suppose with other subjects like a puffin project, then over the course of that time, you're learning about things all the time, and you're learning what I call it it's actually a well-known bird watching phrase. It's called looking at the jizz of a bird, and just being able to see what it's going to do, anticipate its behavior, you know, whether it's going to do something that you can then capture the image in. And I suppose really, Chris, that just comes the more times you spend out in the field, the more times you're likely to, you know, to capture that unique bit of behavior, really.
Appreciate that. Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic, mate. Another brilliant shot, Betty.
I eventually got the I think it was in 2014 that it came out. It was a feature in National Geographic, and for me it was kind of like the pinnacle of my career, really, because I'm not saying it's over. I'm not, you know.
No, it's all. But
going, but you know, it was like a British photographer with a British subject getting
Sure.
in this international magazine, and it's
Absolutely.
kind of like daunting when you realise that National Geographic sell over 10 million copies of this magazine, you know, and
Absolutely, yes,
it
yeah.
was an amazing feeling to actually open that, you know, magazine for the first. I've been reading it since I was a kid, you know. I think
Sure.
it was one of every time you went to a doctor's or a dentist, there was an old National Geographic in the waiting room, weren't there? Really, so
Certainly, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It's almost a dynasty in itself, isn't it?
yeah. And
Absolutely.
the pinnacle for photography, really, mate. It's just
Certainly, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's where you got it. That's I suppose if you're going to do this professionally, those are the types of goals, I guess, that are in your mind as you approach it, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Definitely,
Which
definitely.
great lead is on to this shot, really, because I thought
Yeah.
I'd put this one in after the puffing because when I was kind of coming to the end of the puffing project, I started to work on pine martins, and I'd gone from photographing one of the easiest, I'd say one of the easiest birds in the UK, which puffins are, because you know you've got to get to the location, but once you're there, they're actually really accommodating. You know, you don't need hides, or you know, they're easy to photograph really in that sense, and. And then I started to work with pine martins, and they commissioned me then to kind of work with pine martins. And I'm still 6 years on, Chris. I'm still working on pine martins. So
It's an ongoing project.
it's an
Brilliant.
ongoing project. I think, you know, that first year of photographing puffins, I got 250,000 images of them. In 6 years of doing pine martins, I think I've got about 200 images of pine martins. So
Right. Yeah, I got you. Yes, the margins are much narrower, aren't they? Yeah.
And it's been just that. It's such an elusive animal. It's so rare anyway in lots of parts of Britain, and it's wary of man. It's been, you know, centuries of persecution, and so it's you know, it's actually one of the hardest animals in Europe really to photograph, and so I've kind of made it my life's goal to get. I always say I've got another feature in National Geographic in me, and I think it'll be pine martins.
There we go, mate. Yeah, get it in there, Paul. Get it in there. You give me the name of whoever we need to talk to, Paul. We'll get it in there, right? No problem. But yeah, talk me through this shot, mate, because this is really interesting. And actually, seeing as we're talking about kind of you know, how modern cameras have sort of leapt forward, a subject that's coming towards you is, well, you'll profess to, I'm sure, mate, probably the hardest thing for a modern autofocusing system to cope with. So how long ago was this, and how hard was it to nail that frame?
So I took this a couple of summers ago. So this is kind of like getting on some of my latest stuff, and in a way, really, it's all about the physics of this in this, really, Chris, more than the actual, like say, the subject or the camera itself. This is a pine martin leaping straight towards the camera, and we talked about squirrels. You know what you know, grey squirrel doing the same would be a fantastic picture, but what I had to do was I was actually putting out food for the pine martin because it's the only way of seeing a pine martin. You have to put out food every day just to get them coming into that spot, used to the smell of you around that area. I'm obviously sat in a hide, concealed myself, and very quiet, waiting for the pine martin to come in. And the way it had to get its food, it had to jump from a log onto another log to be able to get its food because it couldn't. I stopped it. I didn't want it climbing up there. I needed it to jump, and then once I watched it jump, I could then put my camera in position and then try and get the autofocus to lock on. You know,
try and get to bang on there. That's it.
take
So
thousands of shots just to get one, really, Chris. So.
I got you. Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I can imagine. It's one of those situations. But what type of which lens did you use for this, actually, buddy?
So this is my favorite lens of all time. This is the 300 2.8.
The 2.8. And was this wide open, or had you stopped it down to about 4, 5, 6, something like that? Was it?
Stopped it down to about 5.6, just to give me a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, I got it.
Jumping through the plane, and you know, kind of. I'd also already pre-focused as well, Chris.
Sure.
So
Sure,
I kind of knew what the position I wanted to do, but then once it kind of jumped forward to me, it was then a case of locking on with the autofocus and then just allowing it to just ping it into focus. 9 times out of 10, it had gone focus on the tree in the background or on the core of the pine marten, and so the head was soft. But
I got you.
So many shots were out of focus. I think it took me about 3 years really to nail it eventually. I think I only managed 2 shots really, Chris, in that time. So
sure, absolutely, yeah. It's a difficult subject matter, Bob. Difficult subject matter, and very unpredictable in that respect as well. So yeah, I mean,
I quite like the out of focus tree and the out of focus foreground.
I was just going to say the it's not just the capture itself, but the actual overall composition of this shot is exceptional. It's very aesthetically pleasing, definitely. But how deliberate was that composition as well? Did you have that in mind when you were framing that up? Or?
Yeah, I got that in mind because what I wanted to give you the impression that it's actually a pine marten jumping through the trees, the tree tops, as what they do. Pine martens are more at home in the trees than they are on the ground, and so to give you that feeling of the jumping from branch to branch, and you know, and I kind of by having the out of focus, shooting it relatively wide open, you know, 5.6 on that 2.8 lens, it's still relatively open, but it's not taking your eye away from the head of the pine marten, which is the ultimate aim of the picture. Really.
That's the focal point, isn't it? Yes, yeah.
Chris, to be honest, it would have been easier to use a wide-angle lens,
right? Yes,
and got the lens and the camera set up closer, fired it remote control. But you would have got the pine marten sharp and everything, but the background and foreground would have played too much emphasis into the picture.
Sure.
Would have lost that kind of like feel of the actual overall image, really.
Yeah, very, very dreamy. I suppose I suppose that's testament to the the 1DX series, isn't it? There's something beautifully aesthetic about the bokeh, as it were. You know, that combination is the dream combination, isn't it? Really, 300 2.8. And that 1DX2, you know, is really it's a real banger, isn't it?
I love the 1DX series, mate. It's just just being a fan. I think that's why I'm so like in the back of my mind, not rushing to change over. You know, it's just. I think I'd missed that one series camera in my hand, really.
Just the sheer bulk of it, isn't it? Yeah, it's very substantial, isn't it? And it's a workhorse. You know, you can't forget that. You know, if you're you know, there are not many cameras out there, pal, that'll go, you know, shutter blocks will go for a 250,000 shots in a year. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those, or in a summer even, you know. So it's certainly one of those workhorses. But back to the lens a second. Do the 300 2.8. So when you play, obviously you've got the 500 in your arsenal, as it were. Because I can remember a time in shot where almost every pro that had been sort of Discovery Channel or National Geographic and they were off on their travels, they'd buy the 300 2.8 and they'd just buy themselves a 2x converter. So they've got 300 and then they've got a 600 f4 or 5.6. You know, is that a route that you went down just for size and weight, or?
Well, I like the. I actually like the 500 as well, you see, Chris. So I would say the 500 is probably my mainstay lens. Getting on for nearly 80% of my images are done on that 500mm lens.
Right.
But whenever I'm away, I've always got the 300 with me in the bag because I just love that feel of that lens as well. And you know, I like it because you can shooting 300. You can add some of the kind of like landscape into it, you know, and so I just carry. But I'm a sucker for carrying.
Yeah, just take them both in case you need them, isn't it? Yeah,
I don't know how the hell I get on an aeroplane. My camera bag must weigh 22 kilos, and I don't know how I ever get on a plane, you know. So
that's it. We've got it right. So here we go, dude. We've got a there we go. We've got a question from our very own Carmarthen Cameras. Here we go. Somebody else is logged in on my account, mate. Let us know who's asking. I've got a feeling this might be Sean. But Danny, do you have any custom settings to enhance sharpness and things like that? Like almost like a custom color profile for your setup?
So I don't do any sharpness in camera because obviously I shoot raw. So whenever you do that sharpness in camera on the raw, it's just you know, it doesn't do anything to the image. But obviously if you're shooting in JPEGs, then you know I'd kind of have it and play around with your sharpness on it as well. So I tend to turn mine off, Krish, on the 1DX2, and I just have it on. I think it's neutral. I just have it on that. So in sharpness is thing, but the trick with the sharpness really is it's Andy. I think Andy is how you do it with your processing on the like say whether you use Lightroom or Photoshop, and it's just kind of subtly doing it on your JPEG when you're showing your image. Because me personally, I actually think people over sharpen images. I see something where it's really just overly sharp, and when you think about it, our eyesight doesn't naturally see that sharp anyway, does it really? And
no, it certainly doesn't.
You know, so I think just kind of tone it down a bit. But the only setting I would do, and I've always found with the Canon system that it doesn't really work very well, I don't think personally, using auto white balance. And I know most photographers that I meet, that's what they kind of shoot with, but I actually like to use my own in the color temperature settings. And so I tend to always mess about with the color temperature. So here I quite like the green, and so I shot it around about 6,000 on the color temperature. And you know, just to warm that green up a bit, get a little bit of vibrancy in the green, and obviously in the fur of the pine marten. So just, you know, mess about with your color temperature. I know you can do it in your processing, but I'm a great believer in, I suppose that's coming from the days of shooting on film, Krish, really, is that you get it right in the camera. Don't, you know, just do it right as you get it, as you shoot. That's the art of it, I suppose, you know. So.
That's it. Definitely, mate. Brilliant. Thank you, Andy, for your question, mate. Right then, what's up next? Here we go. Look at that. That's fantastic. Do you know what? I'm looking at that on my big screen here, and that's fantastically sharp, mate. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. But these last two shots, mate, I just love the dreaminess of it, and just how in focus that subject is absolutely fantastic. But talk us through this particular shot, mate, because we see a lot of the front end of deer, pal, not very many of the back end, like, isn't it? So
so I'll do the technical side, Chris, if you like.
Please.
First.
Yeah, fire away.
This is done on my usual setup, really, mate, which is the 500mm lens with the 1.4 converter. That's giving me a 700mm lens on my full frame 1DX2. And again, by shooting really wide open at 5.6, I'm not stopping down or anything. But what I do whenever I shoot wildlife, really, Chris, I try and get as low to the ground as I possibly can.
Sure.
And here I've got like out of focus ferns. They're kind of like in between me and the deer. They're quite close, and I'm just kind of shooting through this gap of the firm, so it blurs all this foreground out. And because I'm shooting a very wide open, all the attention is on the deer, on the back side of the deer when it kind of shakes this water off him, really. So I love that. We call it mush in wildlife photography world, but it's like you say, that bokeh effect, and that's what this big lens allows you to do. I just love that combination, mate. Really, and that's why I always carry both lenses, mate. Really, my back's done in, mate. But now I'm getting in the 50s, mate. I just can't carry both of them anymore. So I mean, the deer. It's a great for me. It's this is literally 5 miles from where I live, and I've been photographing the deer there since 1988, and I go up every year during the autumn. This is a red deer, and it's a place called Bradgate Park in Leicestershire. It's one of I think one of the finest deer parks in the country. It's got a beautiful kind of head of deer in the park, and I just love that autumn time. The rut's in full swing. You got lovely colours in the muted colours with it, and of course, obviously, lots of rain and dampness in the air. So
oh, brilliant, mate! Absolutely, again, fantastic shot there, bud.
This shot, like, what happens when it rains heavily, red deer kind of sit down and sit out the rain, a bit like cows.
Sure.
And then when it stops raining, they get up and then they shake, and they don't shake like a dog. You know, like a dog ripples all the way through from head all the way down.
Yes.
It just explodes out of its body.
Yes.
And I really wanted a head-on shot.
Right.
And I'd been sat in this pouring rain for 2 hours, waiting for it to stop raining so the deer could get up. And he was facing straight towards me. It was going to be a head-on shot. And just at the last minute, he kind of turned around, and I kind of just photographed the arse end of this deer. And at the time, I thought, oh, bugger, you know, just 2 hours of my life I'm not going to get that. But then the shot kind of grew on me. I thought, you know what, this is actually a more powerful shot than what it would have been if it was head on, really.
I would say so, yes, yeah, because you can still make out what it is. You know, those antlers they're unmissable. I like the sort of the trace of the face there, just you know, in amongst the mist there. So I think it's a great shot. I think it's a brilliant shot. Excellent stuff, mate. Excellent stuff. You should, you know, once we're sort of out of this lockdown and everything's a little bit more sort of free moving, we should plan a workshop down in Deneva Castle, just on our own land. Like, you know, I reckon we'll try and get you down for that, Danny. That'd be brilliant.
It's actually good down there, mate. There's some nice head of deer down there, and we'll definitely do that, mate.
There we are. Sounds good to me, mate. Sounds good to me. And there we go. So last but not least, here we go. Look at this cheeky badger there.
Yeah.
Brilliant, pal. Absolutely brilliant. Go on, talk us through this one.
Again, mate, it's in a way, it's kind of like, you know, like my signature image, if you like, you know, a style I've developed over the years. I like using this long lens, but I don't just use it to get close to the subject. I actually use it to give me this effect of this out of focus foreground background, and it's in a way it's doing it like two ways: shooting wide open, getting that, using that bokeh of what the lens can do, but also getting on a level with the subject, giving you that intimacy where you know, you're kind of lying down on the ground shooting, looking slightly up at the badger, but it gives you this feel that you actually, it takes you into the image, doesn't it? More intimate feel to it, really.
1,000,000%, mate. Yeah, absolutely. That's why this works. So it almost looks like that little just change in perspective where you're slightly tilting the lens up. It almost looks like a cinematic sort of hero shot, isn't it? You know, you're making your subject you know, bigger in stature in that respect. You know, so. Yeah, no. Again, compositionally, this absolutely fantastic. I'm just wondering. So it's just the sort of the undergrowth there, the leaves that are in front of your lens there that are causing that blur in the back in the foreground. Sorry.
Yeah, both really. I've got like so obviously it's a woodland setting, Chris. You've got
Yeah.
like bracken ferns in between me and the badger, and I'm using that as a like a leading line. I've got like a gap that I'm shooting through the ferns, just where the badger's emerging. This is the actual the whole entrance of the set is just below the badger's backside, if you like. So he's just come up. And he's obviously just, the sun's just setting, and just gives you that feel of the badger emerging at dusk, really. But this is one of my latest shots, really. I did this last year when we got locked down. I couldn't travel down where I wanted to go. I was supposed to be in Finland last summer for most of it, but I couldn't travel, and so I thought, well, I can't just sit at home doing nothing. So I started going back to my roots and feeding badgers and foxes and seeing what I could get out of them. And I got to admit, Chris, I probably enjoyed working with the badgers more last summer than because I think what I did is I appreciated what when you've because we've had a lot of taken offers, haven't we? Really,
very true. Yeah, certainly have.
And I think we took it for granted, didn't we? We took it. You take life for granted, but it's not until something's stopped and taken away from you, you realise you can't, and I think that's why I really appreciated it, mate, really. So
absolutely, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it's a return back to your roots, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes in that you do lose that, I suppose, in the kind of the glitz and glam of it, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because as you're pushing to make your projects bigger and bigger and bigger, it's almost you get to that almost Hollywood level, isn't it? National Geographic and all that sort of thing. It kind of starts to snowball, doesn't it? And this is if there's any positive to come out of this situation is that it's kind of made everybody think a little bit about what's on your doorstep, isn't it? So
But, like I say, Chris, we've got some absolutely fantastic wildlife in the UK.
Absolutely, without a shadow, and some beautiful surroundings as well. You look at our countryside takes some beating, definitely.
Well, I mean, Wales. I've done a lot of stuff in Wales over the years. It's just a beautiful country, isn't it? Really,
definitely, no doubt about it, pal.
I'm surprised you let us English in, mate. It's
hey, I tell you what, I'm from Bristol originally, pal. So don't give me away now, right? But brilliant, mate. So that's actually the final image in this in this presentation, dude. So we're gonna invite some questions. I'm gonna just scroll back up to the top. And make sure I haven't missed anybody, of course. Okay, and guys, please do keep your questions coming. Danny's here to answer all those. There we go, and it's back to me and you then, pal. Lovely job. So let's have a little look here. What have we got? Let's start with the nice big one here. There we go. Right. Okay. So, Danny, I'll break this down for you actually, mate, because there's a couple of questions in one paragraph there. Okay. So, so you say I'm hoping to purchase a Canon 100 to 400 millimeter zoom lens. My current wildlife challenge is to try to locate kingfisher along stretches of 3 Mile River. What signs do you look for, and how do you set up for a kingfisher dive? Breaking water shot. So let's start with that, Danny, if we can, mate.
So, I mean, well, it's a good choice with a lens, 100 to 400. That's a lens I've got in my kit bag as well, Chris. I've had that for about 3 or 4 years, and just again, lovely lens. So there's a good start. But I mean, kingfishers. I mean, one of the biggest challenges with kingfishers is actually they're very elusive, but what I've always found with they have a weakness, and that weakness is actually a new perch. and I need a new perch where there's like a branch that you know. So there'll be a that 3 mile stretch. It's quite a long stretch of river, and there'll be a stretch really, Ian, along that river where there's no really overhanging branches or perches or but there'll be fish there. But the only reason why the kingfishers don't fish there because there's not a perch. But I guarantee if you could pinpoint that little stretch of river and then stick a nice thick branch into the bank or just overlooking the water, within a couple of days you'll have a kingfisher land on it. And because they're just a sucker for not landing on a new perch. They love it. You know, it's like it's like us with cars or whatever. You've got to go for it and have a look. But
absolutely, very curious birds, aren't they? In that respect. And so the second part of that question actually, because obviously the perch kingfisher shot is probably the let's say the most common for the guys that can go out there and get that particular shot. Obviously the harder shot is the that point just before they touch the surface of the water. Any tips for that leading on to the second part of Ian's question there?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, what you get as well, Ian, is you'll see a lot of really, really good shots of kingfishers diving in, breaking the surface of the water. And a lot of them come from kind of like setup shots, if you like, because the kingfishers kind of been coming to a spot to get in and dive out of the water. But you can actually try and do it naturally, but use a smaller lens. I think you will struggle with a 300 or a 500 on that because, Chris, I don't know if you've ever seen a kingfisher at the water, but you can't actually see it with a naked eye.
No, right? Yeah, it's just
out of the water, and so the only way of really doing it is kind of get your kingfisher coming to that perch, and then pre-focus on the water below. Don't turn the autofocus off. Just pre-focus. As soon as the kingfisher leaves the branch, just hit your shutter, and just hit it for about 10 times. And with a bit of luck, you might have 1 or 2 shots just as it dives in and comes out. But you've got to pre-focus, and really, it's just trial and error. There'll be at some point where the kingfisher will hit that spot where you focused and stuff, things like that. The other tip I can give, and it comes from my old days of fishing, and if you've got a kingfisher using a regular perch, what I tend to do then is you go to a fishing tackle shop, and you can buy this ground bait that fishermen use to like bait up a swim. A good fisherman will bait that swim over 2 or 3 days before he actually goes fishing. You do that on a regular basis. What you'll do is you'll attract lots of little fish in and around that area because they're feeding on that thing, which then will attract the kingfisher to your perch, and there'll be lots of food that you can fish in. That's one of the natural ways of doing it. Unfortunately, I know from experience of doing it myself, but also what other people have done, that mainly the kingfishers diving into a small area where the fish have been put in, and that pinpoints it really. So, of course, most of these photographers don't tell you that. They don't want to tell you that for the trade, So
no, absolutely, mate, absolutely. But yeah, Ian, I hope that was a good enough answer for you to get out there, buddy, and have a go. And we'd love to see your results.
Chris, you had one more telltale sign of a kingfisher. If the kingfisher is using that perch, you'll see bits of fish scale glistening in the sun, because when the kingfisher lands on it, it bangs the fish against the perch to stun them, and then it follows in, and so you get tiny little scales on the branch where it's been used regularly. That's another classic sign of kingfisher using your branch. But brilliant tip there, mate. I personally didn't know that, but that's a fantastic little tip there. That is, pal.
There we go. This one from Alid, first dude. So we've got right. Where's the best place in Wales you've been to photograph wildlife, mate?
Well, do you know, there's there's a lot really. I mean, obviously, I love the Pembrokeshire coast. I think that's kind of one of the gems of Wales. There, you know, you've got the islands of Scoma and Skocum, and you got Stackpole Cay and St David's. Just beautiful. That whole Pembrokeshire coastal path is fantastic, really. But actually, one of my favourite places, Chris, is right up in the north, up on Anglesey. It's
Right, nice,
really
yeah.
good on Anglesey. Nice for chuff and you know, good seabird colonies up there as well. But we're one of the best places, without doubt, and still, I think one of the best places for photographing birds in flight is the red kite feeding station at Giggreen Farm.
There we go. Literally up the road from us. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just, you know, when I can remember when I first went there in '91, and they had I think about 20 birds coming, Krish, and then I went there a couple of years ago, and there's probably 300 in the area. And just unbelievable experience. So
it's grown massively, yeah, absolutely, and actually, yeah, really grown in popularity with the with the wildlife shooters that are within our sort of local vicinity, as it were. So brilliant, mate, brilliant, Alan. I hope that answered your question there, buddy. Next one from Ryan. Here we go, Ryan Millison. So. Right, what is the best way to spot an active badger set, mate?
So, well, to be honest with you, Ryan, I'll give you a little tip, like with a kingfisher. It's a bit of a gem that I learned over the years. You know, looking at the scales on the branch, knowing if it's in sync. A lot of people, you tell you in the book that you'll see cobwebs over the holes of the badgers, and people think, oh, it's an old badger set, it's not active. But what you've not found is the main entrance. So a badger set will have maybe 5 or 6, maybe even 10 entrances. Wow. But each year they'll change, and they'll only use 2 or 3 different ones. But the others are still more than kind of in use, but are not being used regular. But so it's quite difficult to tell the difference of whether one's being used. So what you could do, if you think a badger is being used regular, just put kind of like a thin branch up alongside it. If it's a rabbit, it won't knock the branch, but a badger is a big, clumsy animal, really, and it will knock the branch away. And so that's one tip. But another tip as well is badgers are actually suckers for hay. Like the hay that you put in like a rabbit hutch or a guinea pig hutch. They just love hay because what they love is fresh bedding, and you don't have to put it about 20 feet away from the entrance that you think is being used. And just put the hay there, and if it's gone the next day, you've got badgers, because they just like to use it for their bedding, and they just can't resist the smell of it. And so you'll see the telltale signs of the hay dragged across the ground, because the way they drag it is they put their front paws around it and go backwards, and so it kind of leaves us like a trail of hay as they do it. So it's a really good tip of knowing a regular badger set.
Absolutely brilliant, Ryan. Hopefully that helps you out there, buddy. There we go. We're going to pop that one off there. So no other questions have come through just yet, buddy. We'll stay on for a second. All right, I'll just see if anybody's got any further questions to ask. I've got one for you, buddy. And I asked this to pretty much everybody that we speak to on these live sessions. If you weren't doing wildlife photography, what other genre do you think that you'd be shooting right now? If you never got into wildlife, what would you be shooting right now, do you think?
Yeah, I think sport, kind of wildlife sport, I can see why there's a crossover there. I mean, I'm sure you must see it yourself, Krish. The lads come in the shop or whatever, and they start dabbling with a sport, but then go into wildlife or likewise, really, and move around.
Yeah.
And you also see a lot of crossover between guys that shoot like uh, aviation, you know, and then
Yes.
crossover with that as well. I think
Mhm.
it's that capturing that action, that thing. So yeah, but it would probably be motorsport or something like that, you know.
Would be the one. There we
But
go. Brilliant.
what a
Excellent.
job
Yeah,
that
I
be, standing
like it.
On the corner of Silverstone trying to capture Lewis Hamilton bomb around in his Mercedes, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And right, so there we go. So that's the first on the spot question. All right, mate.
yeah,
My second one is usually always right. If there we go. Let's phrase this correctly, right? Um, we took wildlife out of the out of the equation. Is there any? I know you said sort of weddings and stuff. Is there a particular genre of photography that takes you out of your comfort zone completely, and something that you would maybe like to grow in the future?
I've got two, mate. Can I give you two? Or
Go on, give me two,
yeah.
pal. Yeah, go on, give me two, buddy. Go on.
So the first one I touched at the beginning was landscape.
Sure.
Some of my favourite photographers, like Joe Cornish, you know, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
Guy Edwards as well. You know, I look
Yeah.
at their work and I just think, man, that's just something I could hang on the wall, you know. And
Yes.
yeah, just absolutely beautiful. And most of it's done in the UK, isn't it? You know,
It is. Yeah.
you see some of these beautiful shots like the Brecon Beacons, and you know, and I've been to the Brecon Beacons. It's just stunning, but
Yes.
I haven't got any decent pictures of the, you know.
Right.
I think it's that would probably be my number one.
Sure.
But also, I'm actually learning how to work with Flash.
Okay.
And I've been dabbling with Flash over the last year or two, mainly because of the badges. Because I wanted to try and capture. I did them obviously coming out in daylight with that nice light, but I wanted to try and capture some of the nighttime activity. And so I've been learning a little bit about Flash and things like that. But that's probably more likely. I'll probably more get the hang of mastering Flash than I will have landscape photography, really, mate. So
Sure. I think the Flash is a quicker process, isn't it? For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah. There we go. Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh, guys, any? Oh, here we go. Lovely. We've got Ian back in again. So if budget budget was unlimited. Sorry, I do apologize. It's small on the screen here. Yeah, budget was unlimited. What would be the one species you would like to photograph for the first time? What is the greatest piece of wildlife photography advice you have ever been given?
Well,
Great question. Really good
question, Ian. You know, that's well, both part of it, really. I'll tell you what. I'll answer the second part of the question, Chris, because what the greatest advice I ever got was actually wasn't from a wildlife photographer. There was a shop in Loughborough. It was they used to sell second-hand cameras. You could get new ones, but its main market was second-hand cameras. And I used to go in that shop every other day. You know, I used to love it. You know, it was like just a classic. An old lady owned it, and she was just wonderful. And the people in that shop were great. And there was an old guy that used to go in there, and he did a lot of like portrait studio work. And I got on well with him, and he said, "Just come along to the studio and have a look, and you know, can see." And I kind of like shadowed him for a few days, and he used to produce these wonderful portraits, Krish, using this old antiquated lighting system, and it was just, and I just, you know, I couldn't see how he was doing it. He was all doing it with exposure and light and the angles of the light, and it was just fascinating watching what he could do with this studio lighting. And he turned to me and he says, "Yeah, but that's photography, Dan." He says, "It's all about the light."
Yeah.
And that was the biggest single advice I ever got. And he just said, "What you need to do is learn how to do indoor studio lighting, and take that outdoor. And so, because outdoor studio is what the sun is above you, and you can different angles and different techniques. That was brilliant advice, mate. Really.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I'd second that. Definitely so. Definitely so, mate.
These old portrait studio guys, mate, they really knew their stuff, didn't they? You know,
absolutely, Paul. Yeah. They don't build them like that anymore. But you know what I mean? They don't build them like that no more. But it was almost a fine art, wasn't it, to get those exposures bang on with film.
They were fine art photographers, mate. Really fine.
Sure.
You know, it's fine art. The first question, which was I thought was great, Ian, was unlimited budget. For me, it would have to be Arctic wolves. I've got a thing about the Arctic. I've obviously spent the last 10 years traveling, working with polar bears, Arctic foxes, and things like that. And my ultimate species would be Arctic wolves. But the only place where you can really feasibly see them is up in Ellesmere Island in northern Canada. And to get there is really expensive, really difficult, a lot of logistics involved. And of course, this will be in the winter, really, Chris. It's not like in the summer.
Yeah, it's not an easy trip. That's it. But it's taxing. Like you say, it's a logistical nightmare before you even start thinking about the photography side of things, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you imagine, Chris, getting all that in, putting years in planning, getting to more or less your final point, but you can't get there because the storm doesn't allow you to fly in. How the hell do you cope with that?
There is unfortunately, mate. You can't control nature, like, isn't it? There's nothing you can do about that, pal. It's a lot out there. There's a lot out there to go wrong, like, isn't it? That's the trouble. So. Aye, and then we've got Sam. So there we go, Sam Bowen, lovely. So, right, when you go out shooting wildlife, do you go out with an open mind, or do you set out with a certain picture in mind, or plan to shoot deer or birds or badgers, etc.?
That's another great question, that, Sam.
Very good question.
I mean, the answer really, Sam, is a bit of both, because I actually think there's two kinds of wildlife photography. There is that aspect of, you know, going to like I say, a deer park and just wandering around, seeing what you're likely to see, and photographing what I like class as shooting on instinct, really, or kind of you know, you're just reacting to a situation that unfolds in front of you. But to be fair, Sam, a lot of my best photography, or most successful, if you like, is where I've been working on it over a long period of time. So I already know where the best light is. I know what the angle's got to be right to be able to get that out of focus, foreground and background. And, you know, by working with badgers over a summer, you eventually pick up like the best places where you are. So you just keep going back every night, really, to see if that's, you know, the badger's going to be in that position. So it's a little bit of both, really. And so, and I always find myself, when I've worked on a project over 2 or 3 months, I then start getting images in my mind of if I get the badger in this position, I could get this shot, or, you know, so your project evolves as you go along, really. Your images evolve as you go along the project. And for me, that's the best way of working. I know as a pro, I've got all day, every day to do what I think. And, you know, it's for an amateur, it's difficult, but, you know, just pick one subject and work with it over a course of a year, you know, and you will find that your portfolio will get better over that period, and you'll just pick up subtleties. And I think it's the best way of learning how to do wildlife photography. So.
Brilliant, Sam. Thank you so much for your question, buddy. That was a wonderful one, mate. Lovely job, guys. That's absolutely brilliant. Danny, we haven't got any more questions coming through. I've just had a quick look at the time as well, pal. We've run a little bit over, but it's Hey, listen, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us, Danny, and giving us your evening. We really, really appreciate it, and we love working with you. And thank you for wowing us with your fantastic photographs, there, pal. Really, really appreciate it. It's been really insightful. And yeah, I think we'll call it a night there if that's all right with you, mate.
It is, Krish, and you've been a great host again, mate. I've
No trouble.
always
No
like
Always a
chatting
pleasure.
with you. Just it's been great chatting with you, and thanks everyone for joining and some great questions. And hopefully,
They're a great
we'll have to do that workshop down your way with the deer.
Yeah, we'll have words with the powers that be, mate, and as soon as it is safe to do so, we'll get those all booked in. All right, matey. Lovely job. Well, there we go, guys. To Danny and to all of you watching at home, thank you so much for joining us. Carmarthen Cameras really, really appreciates it. Danny, we'll catch you sometime soon, I'm sure. All right, mate.
Yeah, brilliant, Chris. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Ta-da. Ta-da.
Thanks, mate.